Hello and welcome to Jurassic Reviews. On this episode we'll be taking a look at an SH MonsterArts figure. That figure is the King Ghidorah 2019 from the film Godzilla King of the Monsters. Before we begin, here's a look at the awesome box that it comes in, which is also pretty large by MonsterArts standards. Here's the front. And here's the back. This is the first non-Godzilla figure I've acquired in the SH MonsterArts line. I mainly wanted this one because there's not too many 2019 King Ghidorah offerings right now, and most of them are the cheaper toy variety. Unless NECA magically change their mind soon, this will probably be the only 2019 King Ghidorah in my collection, until X Plus hopefully does one. They are doing a sweet looking D-for-real one, which I'll be picking up. This King Ghidorah has a huge 24-inch wingspan, and stands 12 inches tall, but can be a bit higher depending on how high you raise his wings up. He's also around 14 inches long from head to tail, but this also can vary depending on how you position the figure. This is just based on a more neutral position. This figure does not come with any accessories as far as special effects, but it does come with some supports for the wings and body. The supports for the wings offer two different lengths, so you can position the wings higher if you want them to be. I just want to say first that this figure really is a mixed bag for me. There are some things about it I like a lot, and others not so much. Let's first start with something I like a lot, the sculpt itself. Even compared to my larger X Plus King Ghidorahs, this one really is impressive to look at. Its bat-like wings are huge and have a great amount of detail on them too. And just as a little warning, the little spikes on each wing are really sharp, so be careful with them. I think my favorite part of the wings is the wavy-like texture throughout them. It looks really cool. The back of the wings are good as well, though they are much smoother overall. Details on the body and legs are good too, with all the little scales on display. Moving down to the feet, they look good too, but the toes are another thing you need to be careful with, as they are both sharp and look brittle. Looking at the back real quick, you'll find more scales here. I like how muscular it looks. It makes sense considering the size of the wings. Moving to the necks, it's really the same story as the body and legs. The scales look great, as does the sharp spikes on the back of each neck. The heads each look pretty much the same, but there is one difference on the right head. One of his horns is broken. Other than that, they are pretty much the same as far as I can tell. I'm sure there was more variation in the film, but for me this isn't a big deal on the figure. Besides the horns and little spikes, you can see their tiny eyes, teeth, and forked tongues. The jaws have a tendency to get a bit crooked, but on mine I seem to get them lined up well enough. I think these heads capture the film version really well, and they each look menacing. They actually might be a little on the large side though. Well, just when compared to Godzilla. The whole scale of this figure in general might be just a tad too big, but I'm not complaining. The size of this Ghidorah is great, and he has such an awesome presence. Now let's move on to the paint, which is an area this figure does not really excel at, for the most part. It's painted a mostly yellowish and brown color, and it doesn't really look gold to me, and the overall paint job is very flat, especially on the necks and tail, and on the back of the wings. It's just like it's missing some shading or something. It could have used a bit more in this area. This figure wasn't cheap, and I just feel like it should have been a bit better for the price. It's not completely bad though. Like I said, there is some brown in there as well, and it does add some depth to areas like the wings. It's just too bad the backs of them aren't as good as the front. So yeah, it's a pretty flat paint job. There is some variation though. The toenails are painted a yellow color, and if we move to the heads, you'll find that they have white teeth and each mouth and tongue is painted pink, with a little bit of red mixed in as well. It doesn't look too bad. The red paint mixed in does look a little sloppy, but it doesn't bother me too much. If there's an area that I think the paint job does work really well, it's the eyes. For one, each is painted on correctly from what I can tell. Each pupil is looking in the right direction. And two, the black, yellow, and red paint for each eye looks awesome. It gives them a very sinister look. Now let's move on to the articulation, which is another area that's hit or miss. Starting with the good, the necks are loaded with ball joints and have a ton of movement. They really are fun to mess around with and pose. And other than the right head on mine being really loose, I haven't had any issues with things popping off. The same can't be said for the tail, which I have to be careful with. Like the necks, there's a ton of ball joints in them. These came detached in the box and really like to snap off if they are moved too much. Now for one of the most annoying parts of this figure, at least when you first open it, and that's the wings. I've gotten a little adjusted to how these things work now, but they are far from ideal. Both of them come separate from the figure and you have to attach them yourself. That in itself isn't a big deal. It makes sense given how large they are. The problem is that they do not stay in very well at all. The first time I tried assembling this guy, they fell off a few times, especially the right wing on mine. Luckily nothing was damaged, but I have a feeling it's going to be the same story for a lot of people with this figure. The stands for their wings really are a must, but it might vary from figure to figure on how well they can hold in certain poses. I like keeping mine in this lower, wider pose, but I can switch it so that the wings are raised up a bit. Both wings are on a ball joint, but I wouldn't plan on moving them around a whole lot. It becomes a tricky balancing act once you have them on. Not only can they fall off, but the figure itself wants to fall forward with them on. The supports it comes with work well enough, but even with them you need to be careful around it. If you're moving other figures around it on the shelf, be careful not to bump into this guy. It might be enough to send him face first into the floor. It's a little bit disappointing, but in the end these wings still look amazing when put on correctly. I just wish there could have been a better solution to lock them into place. Moving to the legs, they have a few ball joints in each of them, but really I don't think they will see much adjusting. It's sort of difficult given how this figure has to stand and balance. Moving back up to the heads, each of their jaws can open, though not very far. The tongues can move too, though I'm not really going to mess with them as they look really brittle and I don't think it would take much to break one. Before I give my rating for this figure, here's a comparison with other figures. Here it is with the SH MonsterArts Godzilla 2014 Spitfire version. Here it is with the NECA Godzilla 1962. Here it is with the SH MonsterArts Godzilla 1964. Here it is with the SH MonsterArts Shin Godzilla. And finally, here it is with the NECA Mothra 2019 and the Rodan 2019, and the SH MonsterArts Godzilla 2019. For a rating out of 10, I give this one an 8. The figure sculpt is stunning. His massive wings look awesome for display. Details look great on it, though it seems to be on a delicate side. The paint job is not so great. This is one area I wish they would have nailed. It would have been a lot easier to forgive some of the articulation shortcomings, as they are more understandable on a figure like this, but the paint's just too flat, and it should have been a little bit better for the price. The articulation, like I said, isn't the best, but besides the wings wanting to fall off, it still gets the job done for the most part. I do recommend this one, but just understand what you're getting yourself into, both with the price and some of its issues. This figure is very much a display piece. Once you have it how you want it on the shelf, I wouldn't recommend messing around with it too much. But once it's up on the shelf and next to your other figures, it definitely grabs your attention. It comes really close to being something truly great. Maybe they'll have a reissue with some improvements down the line. And that does it for the SH MonsterArts King Ghidorah 2019. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you next time.